Fahrenheit, also known as Indigo Prophecy in America and Canada, was developed by Quantic Dream in 2005 and is an interactive drama action-adventure game released on PlayStation 2 and Xbox and later ported to Windows. Billed as an interactive film, Fahrenheit opens with main character Lucas Kane stabbing a guy to death in the restroom of a New York diner. And unfortunately for Lucas, things only get worse from there.
The controls, much like Heavy Rain, another Quantic Dream game, can sometimes take a while to get used to, with most actions represented by moving the analog sticks in a vaguely realistic manner, corresponding to the action that you're performing at the time. Huge set pieces are controlled via Shenmue-esque QTE inputs, and it offers some awesome scenes at the cost of some immersion in my opinion. At certain points in the game you can really feel the freedom allowed in the story. For example, the very first scene of the game. If you, as Lucas, do a terrible job hiding the evidence after murderizing the guy, then when you arrive later as Lieutenant Carla and Sergeant Miles, then you're going to have an easier job identifying Lucas as a suspect, and it's that pulling back and forth that really allows for a lot of freedom in how the story plays out. You know where the evidence is hidden because you put it there, but are you going to choose to find
Unless
it?
there's a gang running around hiding bloody knives in toilets, I think I might have found the murder weapon.
Great. Tell Garrett, have him check for prints on the handle.
Okay. Maybe it was a revenge thing, or a psycho. This town is full of psychos. They're everywhere.
I'm happy to see you. I missed you. I read a book. I can't believe this, Lucas.
I've killed a man.
I can't believe this, Lucas.
You're the only person that I can trust.
I can't believe this, Lucas.
It probably won't take them too long to track me down.
I can't believe this, Lucas.
There's something else you need to know.
I'm a bit lost here.
What are you saying? That I'm crazy? Is that it?
I am a priest.
I'm not a murderer, Marcus. Believe me.
I can't believe this, Lucas.
It probably seems as if I don't have many bad things to say against Fahrenheit, and that's almost true. But one of the main issues, and one of the biggest issues, is the camera. While you do have a certain degree of control over tilting the camera from side to side and actually choosing different perspectives, the problem is it doesn't change the perspective that your character's moving in.
So you end up awkwardly walking back on yourself every time the camera switches perspectives. For the most part, the graphics of Fahrenheit are pretty good, the motion capture is generally impressive, and the main characters have good character models. The NPCs and some of the background characters have less good models though, and sometimes the textures can look a little bit off. The backgrounds and the areas themselves, the environments, are quite good as well. Some of the effects are actually quite impressive.
What did you find on the knife?
I'm getting to that.
Anything on the blade?
I'm getting to that.
What about the pool of blood in the stall?
I'm getting to that.
What was he doing bleeding in the stall?
I'm getting to that.
Did you check for prints?
I'm getting to that. So, what do you think about all that? I'm getting to that.
Now, is this the face of the person you saw?
Yes.
As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the most memorable scenes in Fahrenheit come from the QTE style sections of the game, where a lot of action will be taking place on screen and it will be your job to input a certain command into the analog sticks. Sometimes it's one analog stick, sometimes it's both at the same time, and these sections can actually go on for a lot longer than you would imagine. It never feels unnecessarily difficult or particularly challenging, especially on the lower difficulties, but sometimes I did find myself wondering when is this section going to end, thinking that any other game would have probably ended it by now, but yeah, Fahrenheit will take it that little bit longer and give you a couple more commands to really up the pressure and make a pretty tense scene even more tense. As the game progresses, these sections get a lot more challenging and incorporate a lot more of the supernatural into the story. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't played it yet, because the first time you play through Fahrenheit, it's quite a surprise to see where the story goes. It's something that you should definitely experience. I think if I was going to review Fahrenheit based on my experiences now, I would probably give it around about a 7 or an 8 out of 10. The camera is a really bad issue, but other than that, the game is almost flawless. The music is really good, the graphics, although nothing spectacular, are actually okay, and the motion capture is still impressive. The characters move quite fluidly for the most part. I think the story is the main drawing point. As with pretty much any Quantic Dream game, there's always going to be an interesting story at the core of the game. I think overall the game still stands up today. It's a game that you can play backwards compatible on the Xbox 360, and it's something that you can pick Fahrenheit up for next to nothing. Now, if you haven't played it yet, I would strongly recommend it, and if you have, I would actually recommend you go back and play it again. People say that a lot these days that games don't innovate, so I think Fahrenheit should be applauded for what it did try to innovate. The mood meter is something that you don't see very often in games. I know that it came up in Metal Gear Solid 4, although it didn't really have too much of an impact on the game, and I do remember it being in Eternal Darkness, which it did have an effect in that. But other than that, you don't see it very often. Also, the actual cinematic style of gameplay, it's something that, other than Quantic Dream games, I don't know many that have tried to go down that route. And yeah, you could say that it loses a little bit of the immersion by reducing the game to just moving the analog sticks, but I mean ultimately that's all the game is anyway, with pressing some face buttons as well, you know what I mean? Like you could argue that Tomb Raider isn't particularly immersive because you control that with analog sticks as well. So just having it prompted on screen doesn't really take too much away from the actual game, and it allows for some spectacular cutscenes that you're actually taking part in as well as just sitting and watching.
That's the end of my story. I wasn't able to take the pressure, so I chose to put a definitive end to all the madness. I'll never know what happened in the restaurant, because in the eyes of the world, I'm just a murderer.
Aren't you going to kiss me?